Welcome to Sandy Glen Farm and Forage, and welcome to our tiny little cabin in the woods. My name's Amanda, and today I wanted to talk to you about an exciting project that we're getting started on. Right now, it's mid-January in Northwest Illinois. We're Zone 5B, so those of you familiar with the Midwest, you know that means it's pretty cold and snowy and not exactly great gardening weather. Gardening is my favorite thing to do. I love to have my hands in the dirt, start my seeds, and just grow a bountiful harvest. But right now I'm a little anxious and antsy to get started, and it's just not time yet. So it's great that the timing of tapping our walnut trees coincides so well with the time when I'm dying to do something else. So this will be a nice distraction. Today I've been sanitizing our supplies and getting ready so that once the weather is forecast to be just right, we can head out to the woods and get our taps placed. Most people are familiar with the fact that you can tap maple trees, collect the sap, and boil it down into a tasty sweet syrup. But most people aren't familiar with the fact that there are so many different trees you can tap. One of our favorites here on our property is black walnut. We have over 150 black walnut trees that are big enough to tap, and it is such a fantastic blessing for us, and we've discovered how much we enjoy collecting the sap and making our own syrup. Black walnut syrup is a little bit different than maple. It's got such a rich, nutty, buttery flavor. I prefer it to maple, and it's just so good. Such a nice treat to end up with in the middle of winter. So when we get started, there are a couple of things to know. First of all, it takes a lot of sap to make syrup from black walnuts. Maple trees, it's about a 40-to-1 ratio, meaning you need 40 gallons of sap to cook down to 1 gallon of syrup. For black walnuts, it varies quite a bit. There's some years that it's got a higher sugar concentration, and we can get by at a ratio of 50-to-1, and other years it's about 65-to-1. So it varies quite a bit. It's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding and so worth it. So to get started, first thing is your taps. For the last several years, we've used plastic taps, and they've worked great, but they just don't hold up year after year. When you've got plastic in the cold and you're tapping it into frozen trees, it really doesn't last very long. They tend to crack and snap after a couple of seasons. So we decided to go ahead and invest a little bit extra and buy some really nice stainless steel spiles. These will last a lifetime, definitely longer than we will last. So the next piece of this project is your tubing. We just buy clear food grade vinyl tubing. You cut it to whatever length you need it. We've found that with our method of collection and the slope of our hills that we can get by with some shorter pieces. So most of ours end up being roughly about 2 feet long. Because you want to tap your trees between 2 and 3 feet off the ground. So the last piece of this collection project is your bucket or your jug. We used to use 3-gallon buckets that we got from a local bakery. They're frosting buckets, and they're very nice quality buckets. They'll hold up a long time, but the lids are so hard to snap on and off. I found myself with my frozen fingers not securely attaching them. And when you go out to collect sap and you find muddy paw prints all over your lid askew, and your sap full of mud and raccoon hair, it's a little heartbreaking. So we've gotten away from using buckets that have difficult lids, and we've transitioned to a couple of different containers. These smaller buckets have lids that attach quite well. They're recycled from pasta from a local Italian restaurant, and they work just really nicely. But my preferred method is just a simple jug. Milk jug, water jug. Jugs that you get tea in tend to be a little bit sturdier and hold up longer. But these are really nice because the critters cannot get into them. You don't end up with rainwater getting in them like you do with some of the buckets. The water will collect on top of the lid and drip in, and then you've got contaminated sap. So these have just been great for a number of reasons. So this year we're doing primarily the jugs instead of buckets. A very important step that I'm working on today, you need to make sure everything is clean and sanitary before you begin. Inevitably, by the end of the season, you will have mold growing in your lines and you'll lose lose some sap, you'll have to dump it because you've got mold growing in your buckets. So you don't want to start out with mold spores or with mold in your lines, so you've got to make sure they're nice and clean. For both the taps and the lines, we've found that a flexible brush like this works great. Fill the sink with hot soapy water, let them soak for a little bit, run this brush through, rinse them real good, and then they go into our sanitizer solution. We use just a simple sanitizer that is very common for brewery supplies, for brewing home brew. Oh my, can't talk today. For sanitizing brewery equipment for home brewers. This is just Star San. It's generally 1 ounce for 5 gallons of water. I like to put just 2.5 gallons of water in a big tub, so I use 1/2 ounce of the Star San. It's an acid sanitizer that you don't have to rinse. So once you've washed everything properly and rinsed it, into the sanitizer solution it goes. Give it a good swish. Make sure that you've got sanitizer that's run all the way through it. And then just set them someplace where they can drain and dry. You don't ever want to put them away wet. You'll have funky, musty smelling tap lines that will make your sap smell a little off. So today I've been sanitizing, got everything washed and ready to go so that we can head out in the woods as soon as the weather forecast is right. Now, sap runs only in certain conditions. Some people think you can just go out in the winter and tap your trees. Well, you can, but you won't get anything until the weather conditions are correct. So sap runs best when you've got the appropriate freeze and thaw cycle. You need that difference in pressure to push the sap up in the tree and allow it to drain back down. So we've found here it's best when the temperatures are in the mid-40s during the day and well below freezing at night. You'll have to excuse my driveway alarm. Meant to turn that off before I started filming, but I totally forgot. But anyway, the freeze-thaw cycle is important. Mid-40s during the day, below 30 overnight, preferably mid-20s. That gives you that nice variation and you get a lot more sap flow during that time. Sunny days, it's fantastic. You get a lot more sap as well. When it comes to the differences between maple and walnut, there are some stark differences. Since maple has higher sugar concentration, it takes about 40 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup. With black walnut, it's got a lower concentration of sugar, so it takes roughly 50 to 60 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of walnut syrup. So you bring it back, keep it frozen so it doesn't spoil before you're ready for it. And then we've got an evaporator my husband made that we fill some metal pans with the sap and we just keep it stoked all day. Sit and drink coffee and boil sap and smell that sweet steam. It's just amazing. This project is so much fun for us, and it's even more fun if you have kids that can learn and share in the adventure. Every day we'll take off with the ATV and the wagon behind it and a couple of really big jugs, and we go tree to tree dumping all the individual gallons of sap into our collection vessels and then bring it back, keep it frozen until we have the perfect opportunity to boil sap all day long. So I hope you'll tune in next time. Today we've covered just the basics of getting ready and getting started. Hopefully soon the weather will change so that it'll be time to actually tackle this project and get to start the exciting part of it. And we will film that as well. We'll go start to finish from the very basics to tapping the trees, how far to put in your taps, how to drill the holes, how often you need to collect it. You'll go with us as we collect the sap, and then we'll bring you along as we begin the process to boil it into syrup. It's such a wonderful project, and it's even better at the end of it to have such a sweet treat that you can share with your family and friends. So thank you for taking the time to join me today. I hope you'll tune in for the rest of this project, and I hope you have a very blessed day.